So, as our main topic for today was energy security, then I would like to start with a question to all presenters about security and what actually is your main concern regarding energy security, and how you see that the hydrogen and fuel cell technologies can help to overcome these security issues.
Well, I think somehow I addressed it at the beginning of my presentation, was that we need to become independent from unstable regions outside of Europe. And I think that we have to speed up on that as soon as possible, because energy security, if somebody out of Europe is just closing the pipelines, or they are not supplying us with crude oil anymore, I think we have a huge economic damage here in Europe. And I'm not sure in how far on the political agenda this is realized. I mean, sure, they all talk about it, but I think we need to see more actions. And this is a bit what I'm worried about, is we have solutions. I mean, we just talked about the whole day about the solutions. And I think we need to be able to mobilize also politicians, maybe our policies, to really do something about this energy security. Not only talk, but action. I think that's the most important. And I don't see really happening it yet. Of course, through the FCHJU, we are making some demonstration plan. I mean, to show really, to convince policymakers, look, it works. You can do it. So don't hesitate. Invest in it. I think policy, that's what we need now. And yeah, of course, we have to do the continuous research also to reduce further the costs and so on. But I think that is the main worry me for security. And of course, I mean, as also Robert said, I mean, we might have some cyber attacks or some, I mean, also natural disasters. I mean, what happened in Florida recently? I mean, now if you hear 2 weeks, 3 weeks without any power supply, I mean, we are 2017. I mean, come on, we're flying to the moon. I mean, why we cannot make sure that every house has power? I mean, it's so basic, you know. And so it is possible we have technology, but maybe the political will and policy, I think that's the key point to make it happen.
I think the main issues are energy imports. So we have Europe gets some natural gas out of Holland and some out of the North Sea. The North Sea is that's sort of completely dwindled since the middle of 2005 or something. I think it's gone down to 20%, 25%. In Holland, you can't extract more because it's caving in. They're getting earthquakes in Groningen, which is a bit of a joke because it's all sand. You can't have earthquakes there, but it's the natural gas caverns caving in. So 85% of oil is coming from outside the Europe anyway. So we just have to get away from that. And integrating more renewables is the key to that. And hydrogen fuel cells well, hydrogen is one of the options for storage, and fuel cells then for, of course, on the vehicles, turning that back into electricity, or even sending it back to the grid. And the other thing is threat to the infrastructure, whether it's natural disaster or storms or whatever, or whether it's malignant interference. In Germany, there was a snowstorm 3-4 years ago, and part of the Münsterland just was without any energy supply for 3 weeks in winter. That wasn't funny. And I mean, in a case like Florida, if everything's flooded, you could have some doubts whether decentralized energy production would still help. But in that case, of course, it would have helped. So it makes the whole energy system much more reliant, resilient.
Does it work? Yeah, I think we all more or less agree that there are a number of technical solutions. There are also sources of energy available to make a paradigm shift happen. We need political will and determination and kind of predictability of what's going to happen next year, kind of long-termism for a while, because these are solutions that they require large numbers of units produced, but that can also be seen as an advantage, because then you can really utilize the effect of volume production and like compare it with automotive, for example. These are like little power plants on wheels, and when the production volumes are very large, you can introduce the technological improvements and really make use of the volume effect on the manufacturing cost. So we just have to get things going and not expect and wait that things will just somehow magically remain the same for the next decades and we'll have time. I think we should be a little bit hesitant and push things forward.
I agree with all other speakers. I think it was quite long time ago. Already Jules Verne told that the future of all universum is hydrogen. So it's not new. I think it's maybe it's a problem for us to go out from the comfortable zone and start think really what must be happened, and let's do something by ourselves. I think it's a problem of policymakers, and actually to go out of a comfort zone. But today is comfortable, but tomorrow maybe not.
Yeah, that's true, but several times it came out that maybe the biggest threat to energy security is our dependence on imported primary energy. So, and for that, we should, of course, increase local production. For that, for example, wind and power is a very good example how to increase local power production. But as you know, the storage still is a problem which is not solved correctly, and without good, efficient storage, you just already now it's not possible to increase wind and solar. So it's a kind of eternal battle now, or it's not eternal, but you know, batteries are seen as a main storage technology. But today we had several discussions and presentations where also fuel cells, and especially solid oxide fuel cells, were mentioned as the most efficient technology for electrolyzer and storage in form of hydrogen. So what is your feeling how this battle will end between batteries and fuel cells? Not only in energy storage, but also in transportation, because battery electric vehicles are already on the road. Also fuel cell electric vehicles, hydrogen, but still batteries are more well known and it's more established technology. So how do you feel end of the day, 20, 25 years from now, from transportation and from storage point of view, what technology will win?
Which technology will win? I think it's not about winning. It's about education, first of all. I think both technologies are complementary. So, first of all, we both technologies have the same goal, is to decarbonize society. And I think this is first priority. I mean, we have a, I would say, common enemy maybe together, which is maybe the, well, polluters, which we would like to replace to green technology. So let's work together as number one. I think secondly is that we need to educate the society much more. And I agree with you, we need to come out from our comfort zone maybe and from our community and really go out, go to the politicians, go to big organizations and whatever, NGOs and so on, and explain the technology and explain the differences, because batteries, fuel cells, they are complementary. They are not fighting. It's very clear that, I mean, if you saw the document that the Hydrogen Council released in January, so you know, in January at Davos, the World Economic Forum, 13 very big companies of the world, I mean, Shell, Total, Toyota, and so on, they came out with a document showing exactly that complementarity. So, for example, if you talk about cars, we can say low distance driving around the church, for example, those areas, maybe it's batteries, fine, you don't need to go for maybe fuel cell. But if you go for example, a salesman who has to cross the country every day, well, sorry, it will not work. So they need another technology. So what I believe very much is that the customer will select his type of technology based on his needs, first of all, but also based on the location where he lives, his environment, because also that's important. So it's not about battling. I mean, you have the same thing in buses. I mean, you have some, for example, airports, they are also putting now zero-emission buses. But one bus on an airport makes like 6,000 kilometers per year, because it's all very short laps. Do we need to put a fuel cell there? Maybe a battery is better. So, but if you have to move into the mountain areas, maybe there's only one solution, it's maybe fuel cell. So again, where the location and the needs, that will decide which one is the best technology. So, and we need to work together with them. And actually also on the European level, we have now taken some action, and maybe very soon you will hear some announcement, but we are working together with the battery associations and people, where we will try to make a joint communication about, look, this is complementary. We need to advance on both technologies. We need research support on both technology. It's not one or the other. Education is, for me, the key point.
What do I want to say? Lost the thread now. There's no competition, because you need both. So you can't be more efficient than a battery if you're in a battery vehicle. So if you charge the battery vehicle from the photovoltaic plant, it gives you a cycle efficiency somewhere 80 to 95%. There's no sense of having a fuel cell vehicle for that. But then, of course, you have the problem of the range. If you take the fuel cell, you get the range. So, as I said, it might be a good or bad thing if you keep the use of a vehicle as it is, because essentially we are also moving to a different type of mobility. So we should be talking about different types of transport, but essentially we are perpetuating the concept of a personal car. So I'm not always convinced that that's the right thing to do. But then again, so with the fuel cell, you can behave as if you had a normal car. But the efficiency goes down. The efficiency is like 35% or something like that. So what you need is the hybrid of the two. You need a small battery, and you need with which plug-in, essentially, where you can charge directly and have the high efficiency if you go short range, and if you want to have the longer range, you switch over to the fuel cell. That is the ideal system, plus it saves you a lot of cost, because you need a far smaller fuel cell and you need a far smaller battery, and it gives you the full performance of a car. So there is no competition, really. You need both.
But what about storage?
For stationary?
For wind and solar storage?
No batteries.
Why?
Because it's, no, hang on, it's not true. As I said, so for a photovoltaic system, 10 kilowatt hours, 20 kilowatt hours, it's fine. If you go to really large scale systems, it doesn't really make sense because the storage density of a battery is a factor of 60 below the storage density of hydrogen. Even if you took a certain, if you take then, let's say 50% conversion efficiency of the fuel cell, it's still 30. So there's a factor of 30 in between as far as the capacity per unit of weight or whatever. So batteries are immensely large, immense weights, a huge cost just because you need all this material, which you can simply avoid with the hydrogen. So I don't really see them as large-scale storage, just interim, like if you have an uninterruptible power supply, all these things, you'll have them, yes, but not for very large systems.
But really what you actually see currently happening already in US and also in Australia, a lot of battery storage is built, and not in small scale, but in megawatt scale. So why?
Because there's nothing else. Either you need a mountain for a hydro scheme, compressed air is really not really getting there, or you need the geological formation to have a compressed air cavern, and there's nothing else. The only thing is if it's redox flow battery, that's a different story. That might make it because it's, you don't have the losses, and it's more like a fuel cell than a battery. Or if you like, it is the compromise between the two. But even that, it's expensive, and it's too big, too bulky. So the only way you really get the concentrated energy is essentially it's hydrogen. And it's chemical storage, and you cannot get anything better than chemical storage because you don't have losses. Anything else is potential energy. You'll always get relaxation to the original state, so thermodynamics, and chemical energy can last for kind of forever. So I don't see batteries in large-scale systems. Maybe now because there's nothing else, like flywheels. They will never be very large because you just can't build them that big. So as long as there's nothing else, you'll see them to a certain scale where you need them for uninterruptible power supply, especially because that's so valuable. But just for grid support, I don't see that.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think there are always dangers in picking winners, particularly if you let politicians to do that in a way that it locks us into a solution that we'll find out in a couple of years' time that it didn't work out, it wasn't the optimal one. But considering where we are at now, we really shouldn't really introduce this conflict between the different solutions. I think in all of the possible futures worth pursuing for, hydrogen will be there, but we don't exactly know whether that'll be at the pump, at the gas station, or in a synthetic fuel production, or in what scales and sizes. And there'll be different ways of doing that. But now we shouldn't really stop here waiting until we know for sure which way it's going to be, because all of these futures have so many things in common anyhow. So we should just open up the possibility for experimentation and further innovation as well. I assume and hope that tomorrow we know something we don't know today. So there'll be also a future evolution of ideas. But hydrogen will definitely be part of the future. At which level, I can't answer, but maybe someone else can.
Actually, I agree with previous. Yes, the point is that it's not the reason to make the competition between the electrical cars. Both fuel cell car and battery car are electrical cars. And I think it's better to have, for the customers, as we know, customer is a king. For customers to have a choice, to have a possibility to choose. If you need a smaller range for the cars, battery cars may be better. If you need something, drive in mountains, it's fuel cell better. So it's actually only thing that we know that this combustion engine in fossil fuels this amount will be reduced. But the other things, I think its future will show to us what will happen. For the storaging, the best way to storage energy is to use hydrogen. Here is no doubt. But okay, we must to concentrate on this and to find out the best solutions, the cheapest solutions, and we will see later what actually will happen and who will win. Thank you.
Okay, for sure. My question was intriguing on purpose. Just, I have always said that we don't have competitors. We have to work together with different technologies, and also inside the fuel cell community, we have to work together with all the stakeholders. But my last question before we are going to Q&A session, I started my, or in my opening words, I referred to Nobelist Wilhelm Ostwald, who graduated from University of Tartu end of 19th century. And he, in several occasions, mentioned superiority of a fuel cell technology over the conventional power generation. It was more than 130 years ago. And it was just under discussion that we have to talk to politicians, that they just kind of coming out of a comfort zone and the will to change also to come or to be happen from the governmental or policymaker side. So how come these obvious things, which have been already known for more than 100 years, is still not clear to the wider audience? What is the problem? Are we not communicating properly, or what do you see? What must we do to the policymakers just to understand that what is the most efficient way really to convert power and then store energy?
It's a very good question. Well, first of all, hydrogen and fuel cell technologies, in my opinion, is complicated. It's not easy to explain it. So, for example, if you talk about batteries, I mean, when we were maybe 5 years old, we had this telecommando cars, you know. We all know, oh, it doesn't work. Oh, I changed the battery, you put it and you charge the battery and you put it in. So basically, this kind of technology, we grew up with that. Everybody knows it. Huh? When you were 5 years old, did you ever talk about a fuel cell? Hydrogen? Maybe if you did some science lessons, maybe in the secondary school, that's the first time you touched with hydrogen, the word. Even fuel cell doesn't appear yet. So what I want to say is that basically it's not in our educational system, or we never too much experience it. Only very later, and maybe a little bit higher education, where we really learn about fuel cells and hydrogen per se. So, but batteries, we just go up for that. So when you go to a politician, and I experience this issue a lot, to explain fuel cells and hydrogen, you need 15-20 minutes time with a politician just to be able to explain what the technology is. And then you have to start to explain what it brings to them. So it takes time. You cannot make a pitch in 2 minutes with them, like, that's why we need it. And they say, oh yes, of course. So you need time to spend with them, and it's education. It takes really, really a lot of time. First of all, also, another thing is that still a lot of research was necessary. So we basically in the research community, we really spent time to make a very, very good solution. And when we look to, for example, batteries, well, they were 5 years, 10 years earlier, and when they came to the market with their technology. So they were, in a way, the first. We have a delay of 5 to 10 years with our technology. So we need to catch up with that and make sure that we communicate that what this technology can bring. I think that's two reasons why, I'd say, why it's not yet very famous, I would say, this technology. Of course, there are more reasons, but I would say these are the two that I see as the main reason.
This time I do not agree. The point is this. So there's two problems. One is hydrogen fuel cells do something that is there already. They produce electricity, they produce heat, and we have gas boilers, we have plug sockets here. There's no problem in getting electricity and heat. At least not as a consumer, you don't perceive this. If we think more strategically, of course, we see the supply and all these other things we discussed. So as a consumer, as a customer, I don't really see a problem that is solved by a fuel cell. And the second is, if I went to a shop, I could actually buy some, but they'd be extremely expensive. So unless I'm a technology nerd, I wouldn't buy one, or a fuel cell vehicle. I can buy them, but it's very expensive. So for, say, Joe Public, there's no reason why they should buy a fuel cell or buy into that technology. They read about it. I'm pretty sure there's all these Horizon kits and the remote control vehicles. There's more 5-year-olds than you think who've already experienced a fuel cell. But the fuel cell doesn't do anything the battery did maybe 100 years ago. So a battery came in and suddenly you had electricity for torch or whatever, pocket light. There's not that many things you can do with a fuel cell today you wouldn't be able to do otherwise. There's a couple of things, and that's how they sell. So like smart fuel cells have sold 30, 50,000 units. Nobody actually takes any notice of them, but they've sold 50,000 units at 40,000 euros per kilowatt. I mean, hey, who's ever done that? So it's a niche market, of course. So it's portable power supply. So the only support fuel cells get is from policies. So politics have to decide at a sort of societal level. We have a problem with air quality in urban areas. We have a problem with energy supply, imports. We have a problem with climate change. And then has to put the policies in place which say, okay, this is a technology that hurts, so it gets a surcharge. Here's a policy or a technology that helps. It will get a support. And that's not happening. Why is it not happening? Because there's large companies with all the investment and all kinds of stuff that hurts the environment, but they're not being charged for it. And as long as this sort of biased economical system exists, with no clear positive impact on the single consumer, it won't change by itself. And that's all the problem.
Yeah, I fully agree that if fuel cells are perceived as a better mousetrap, a new solution to an old problem, that you already have something that you're used to, that's not going to create the demand. I think in every field of technology, advancement of technology kind of sets stage for making stricter norms and requirements and standards, and this is what fuel cells can really do. We can show already at this level huge advances or benefits compared to the legacy technologies. But politicians are not going to kind of build the industry for us. It'll have to be us. And I think if you look at what's happened in the energy sector altogether, that used to have so much built-in inertia. The business models, the kind of generation model, everything was designed for very long periods of payback and controlled cash flow coming in. So if you then consider how much it has changed recently, the rapid increase of solar, distributed generation in general, virtual power plant concepts coming online, and all these things. So I think that they are very positive signs for the potential to change the way things are done, and we just have to prove our worth by the technology with the assistance of norms and standards and requirements, which we should be able to communicate because the improvement compared to the state of the art is so great.
I agree with you, but I must add, in my own experience, that here is two problems, two main things. One is money, the second is policy. So, actually, if you will look seriously, where is the main money resource in the world? It's on the hand of oil companies, gas companies. This is a fact. So, if we will go in a new energy resource, okay, everybody see the sun every day, but this is it's a competition for the oil companies. They don't like it. How many they will told us that they are very innovative and so on? Don't believe them. Actually, it's against them. So, if we want to change something, we must make policy. To build up a new infrastructure, it's first of all the responsibility of the government, not the enterprises. So we must have the knowledge to the government. Somebody must learn them. So we are in the remarkable place. This place is Academy of Science. So from here must go serious and very strong with like a push to the government. You must do it so. You must do it another way. Like we have one very famous academic, Mr. Lippmann, who was such kind. So right now, I think the first input, impulse must go out from this house. The second, decision must make in governments, and after that, together with enterprises, to build up a new society. Right now, you told that it must have like minimum 20 minutes to explain to the government administrators or officers what's about. I think it's very optimistic. It's very optimistic. I spent 1.5 years to get the policymakers to make this decision to put to the Estonian government this development plan hydrogen, because till April this year, there is no existing in development plan a word hydrogen. Right now it is, but it took time 1.5 years and not 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's true. Something about oil companies and coal companies. Why they have money? Do you know? Not because they are selling the products with the high margins, but actually they are heavily subsidized. And subsidies going to oil companies and also to coal companies, dirty energy, is about 5.3 trillion per year. 5.3 trillion per year. That's why we have so cheap gas and oil.
There's another aspect to that. So it's perceived wealth. It's not necessarily cash flow. It's because they own all the oil fields, they're incredibly wealthy. So a year back, I think, or 2 years back, we got this discussion about the amount of CO2 that can still be released to the atmosphere to reach the 300 or 400 ppm. If you calculate that amount of fossil fuels behind that, it's about a quarter or less than that of all the fossil resources, which immediately means that you reduce the value of Shell and all of these companies by 80%, which means they can't go to a bank anymore, they won't get any money. So essentially they're broke immediately. It's not that they have billions in their pockets. They have to get it from a bank, they have to pre-finance. The moment their assets are worth much less, they don't get money from a bank anymore, and then they're off, they're out of the market. And it's gradually dawning on them. So companies like Total and I think Shell are sort of diversifying. They're trying to build their stakes in other regions because of that. Because once any of the banks realize, or any of the investors realizes that the value is not what it looks like, they're just out of business.
I fully agree, and I think we do see this year a change, really. I mean, I touched upon Davos, where these big companies announced that they will invest 10.5 billion euro in the coming 5 years in this technology. And in those 13, there was only Shell and Total. What happened after that is even more interesting. I had a visit from BP. I had a visit of Statoil. I had a visit of Kuwait. And they're all saying, what happened? Did we miss something? No, really. And so now they're all starting to work on hydrogen. And I think it's a very, very promising development I see. And when I looked maybe 5 years ago, in our, let's say, in our funding system, there was almost no top 500 R&D spender business in our program. Today, we have already quite a lot of them, and we even have now top 100 already in. So that means is that now also the big industries are starting to look at this technology, and once they are serious, that will accelerate things. Not linear, but exponential, because they have indeed money, is one thing. Secondly, the subsidies, it's true, because green technology gets only a fraction of the subsidies that oil technologies, get. And that should change. I think that could be a game changer if somebody takes up on that.
But the problem with the fossil fuel subsidies and renewable subsidies, renewables, I think they will get somewhere around 1 trillion annually, global, which is about 20% of fossil fuel subsidies. But the problem is that fossil fuel subsidies are in the countries who actually produce the fossils, like Russia, China, most polluting countries. They are subsidizing export actually and production of fossil fuels. Otherwise they couldn't sell at affordable prices. But the renewable subsidies again are in these countries who don't have resources, natural resources like oil and gas. So it's pretty hard to decrease and increase because they are locating in different regions. Actually, only country who now equalizes both subsidies is China. The clear shift from subsidies from fossil to renewables. So that's the only case, but we don't see it in other countries. But in China, case of China, it's also local. But okay, let's see what will happen. So I think we could discuss it forever, but for sure you have a lot of questions you want to ask, and the microphone is there available if you want to ask the questions. Please.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about energy storage. If we are now building electrical cars, and let's say it goes well, and we will have 10% of passenger cars in Europe, electrical cars. With that, we have created a huge storage. Now, how this amount, okay, let's say cars are 300-kilometer cars. So now, maybe this storage, what we created for different reasons, basically, could be used as buffer storage. It's now the organization, because most of these cars drive just 1 to 3 hours per day. And so on. If they are connected to your home grid, they are really storage as well for your home grid. So could it be integrated? Have anybody thought about that?
Oh yes, many people thought about that. It's absolutely not a new concept at all. But I think it's nice as a concept, but to do it, it's again another thing. Of course, you have these smart meters and this. I mean, electronics can basically control charge, discharge of your batteries and so on. I mean, also you have, when you do that, also your battery will be used more and more, charge, discharge, so your battery will age faster. So that's maybe something you need to think about and to solve, because do you want to do that? Do you want to use your battery, the car that you paid the battery, and then somebody else is basically damaging your battery? It's kind of things that we need to think about. Also, one thing that you cannot control is the human. Even you put a smart meter on it, still the human can override it. The human can decide, no, I come home, I want to charge my car now. Even I want to pay a little bit more, maybe because you could work with your costs of your electricity, but you say, no, I want to make sure that if whatever happens during the night, that at least I can immediately have a fully charged car. And so all those theories, like we do during the night the charging and rebalancing and so on, yes, to some extent, but there are factors that simply we cannot control, which is human. Sorry, we can never control humans. And I think, so it's possible, but still a lot of research and a lot of work will have to be done around that. And policy as well.
Okay, thank you. I nearly agree with you, but as you know very well, but you did not mention that these batteries, they have a lifetime or cycle number, what you can do. And if you are taking into account that you are going to support this grid over the car, lithium-ion battery, then it depends, of course, how cheaply you are going with this discharge or charging step. And you are going to lose these kilometers what you can run using this car. And it is a limit. If I am going to buy this lithium-ion battery-based car, then I am never going to reuse this lithium-ion battery cars to fuel my electrical heaters and so on, because it is too expensive. Batteries are too expensive to regenerate electricity. But I have the question about that, of course, hydrogen as a fuel is very nice and clean. But if you are using the hydrogen to regenerate electricity, then you are losing on thing what is efficiency, total energy efficiency. So do you have the same feeling as I, that when we are using electrolysis to produce this hydrogen, then we don't have any economic sense to regenerate electricity to grid, or to use this hydrogen as a fuel for these fuel cell cars and so on, because it's more efficient, even from the environmental point, than regenerates electricity. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you touched a very interesting point. Well, first of all, we have to store the electricity that at the moment we don't generate. So just to go to Germany, today the windmill operators are paid by the national government. They get some money for that, taxpayer money, to stop the windmills because the grid is unstable. So we lose a lot of efficiency in a way because we don't use that electricity. So let the windmills run and let's make hydrogen from that. So that will be a huge efficiency gain already there, because today you don't use it, so efficiency is 0. So if you keep it running, at least you have a good efficiency. Okay, and if you make it electricity back, then at least you have a 30% gain already in electricity. So there is very clear already a gain. But I fully agree with you is that once you have basically your hydrogen, you should use it. And you should use it in cars, transport, eventually micro CHPs, whatever you can use. I think it completely makes sense. But on the other hand, you have to store as well as a buffer in case you need it for blackouts and so on. So it will serve the both purposes. I think to put it back on the electricity network, it will be mainly as a kind of backup power, this kind of direction. Actually, to give a complete good answer on your question, we exactly started a project in Denmark which called High Balance. That's where basically we build now I think it's a 2 megawatt or something more, like a 2.6 megawatt or something like a electrolyzer, which is basically using this windmill's excess energy, because actually in Denmark there's also a problem. If your electricity price is negative at the trading system, basically you are not allowed as a windmill operator to put more electricity because you get a penalty for that from the government. So just imagine. So what happens now is that basically they will generate hydrogen, and so they store it. That hydrogen will be used to a local factory who needs hydrogen very close by. It will be used to fill up buses, will be used to fill up cars. It will also be stored and later to be able to put on the grid as well. So actually, one of the coordinators of this project is actually a electricity trader. So a company, the only thing they do is they buy and sell electricity. And they will really try to make a business model. So they have several streams of revenues, and they will see whether the financing model works, or they will develop actually this financing model. So we are really looking forward to the result of that, because if it really shows that it can become a business case, which in theory many people believe so, but I want to see facts. We all, a lot of research this year, we would like to see really the actual data. So we are looking forward to that. And I think when we can show it, then it will be very interesting.
Quick comment. I think in the end, once we have passed the periods of heavily subsidized forms of generation, energy efficiency does matter at the end. You can now say that we have surplus in generation, so let's do something rather than nothing. And then you with all of the losses, you start feeding the electricity back in the net. But if it wasn't subsidized in the beginning, you wouldn't really have the rationale to invest into the surplus generation. So I think you mentioned the word sector coupling, and for example, in the field of transportation, maybe the hardest part to convert to electricity will be aviation. And when I said that hydrogen will be there in the future, but at which level and for which purposes, there could be a possibility of producing synthetic aviation fuel, fully renewable and carbon neutral with that excess. And then that would be a higher value used for the hydrogen. Like just building a lot of extra capacity and then not being concerned of the energy efficiency, I think it's a little bit unlikely future in very large scale. In small scale, there could be kind of strange cases where it makes sense, but in the end, you also have to think of the primary energy use and thermodynamics and this kind of nasty things.
Well, just one comment, one and a half. I'm also concerned about the round-trip efficiency. So re-electrifying hydrogen, which you've produced from excess wind energy, doesn't give you a very good efficiency. So I said like 35%. If we do everything with high temperature, we could go up to 70, which is reasonable. but we're not quite there yet. But it's essentially you have to think differently. Any storage is inefficient. Any storage is not economic. It just adds cost. It doesn't do anything. So years ago when I did my PhD, we tried to find out what is the cost of a kilowatt hour that comes from a pumped storage station. We never found out because you just couldn't find the figures. We hypothesized €2. Nobody talks about that. So essentially what you have to look at is the total system. You want to balance the system, you need the grid support, you need the grid services, so you just get them. And you get them at the lowest possible price. You're not concerned about the efficiency in those cases. You want to stabilize the grid, you just get whatever it needs, you don't talk about efficiency there. You don't talk about the efficiency of the gas turbines, of the hard coal-fired power station, which are in standby efficiency 0, but you have to keep them in hot standby so that they can ramp up. All that is not in the picture. It's getting into the picture when you later look at the CO2 emissions. That's why German CO2 emissions aren't dwindling as fast as they could, because there's this, that is one of the problems, the hot standby. And, but if you look at, you just have to look at the total system and then look at what the system cost is and the delivered electricity, and that's how you can't look at the single technology. It just is misleading.
I fully agree with that. I mean, it's your societal cost. I mean, you have to look which system costs the most for the society, and that is what you should not do. You should go for the cheapest way, and that's less impact on the societal cost. And I think, if you be very honest, the way we are doing it now, I think we are not doing it really in the best way. I think there's better ways to do it, and that's what I again come back. We need to educate that to the people who make the decision, who is writing the policies, and that they understand what is the meaning of societal cost and what is the most economical, beneficial, complete system, as Robert says. So really, what is the best way? I mean, good value for money, for the taxpayers' money. What is the best value, and what is the system that we should put in place? And there will be again a combination of all kinds of technologies. But surely hydrogen will play a very important role.
Today we are talking about green energy, and what is the definition for the green energy is? My personal opinion is that it's an energy what located in the wrong place or at the wrong time. That is the first. And we are talking about the hydrogen and energy, and we didn't talk about prices. It is at least 5 to 10 times more than ordinary energy's prices today. And that is the question. How does the hydrogen energy look like green after that, if you take account the prices? We spend this money for anything else, for dirty energy or whatever. We lost this money. And that was the question. And I know how to take involved the politicians. We have to add just 20% taxes to the hydrogen energy, and after that the politician will be happy. And they can call it green taxes. That was a joke.
If you buy hydrogen at a filling station, you pay 10 euros per kilo. That's about 30 cents per kilowatt hour. That's not that excessive expensive.
I mean,
you need everything else around.
yeah. I mean, the price of 1 kilogram of hydrogen, again, varies very much of every location. So, and the origin of the hydrogen. So, for example, in Norway, in the north side of Norway, you can buy hydrogen at €2 per kilogram already today, because they have so much excess energy. That's why the Japanese are so interesting to buy their hydrogen and to bring it to Japan.
This is not subsidized.
And this is not subsidized, no. Yes, they're making profit on that. I mean, in Germany, in Köln, there's a huge chemical site. And there, they have a lot of waste hydrogen, gigantic amounts of waste hydrogen. That's why Köln is putting 50 hydrogen buses there, and they are promoting fuel cell cars because the cost there, and you buy it today, is 3.8 euro per kilogram. I can show you the pictures of the pump in Köln. It's 3.8 euro, and they make profit out of that. Okay, let's switch to, for example, Belgium, Antwerp. There they sell it at 11, 12 euro, and they even make losses. So it's very much depending from where location, where your hydrogen is coming. I mean, the cost of hydrogen there's so many variables in that. It's really case by case you have to look at. You cannot generalize it. I mean.
In fact, it's not so bad like it seems like. Once again, it's about you must think out of a comfortable zone. You must think a little bit differently like you normally thinking. The point is that let's look in this logic. For 1 kilogram with hydrogen, you need theoretically about roughly 40 kilowatt hours energy. Am I correct, Mr. Lust? So it means that and 99% of cost of hydrogen is making it through the electrolyzer. It's a cost of electricity. How much cost sun power? How many euros cost the sun power? But every morning is going up and every evening going down. Nothing. Nothing. Okay, let's see. I think the magic word for all this new thinking is integration. You must think and how it do it best. You need engineers, high qualification engineers who make possible everything. That's it.
Okay, if I ask this previous question, I mean that maybe we have to develop new materials, new systems to use this hydrogen or syngas at least to have the high efficiency as well as to have this. And what do you think, what type of studies we need to improve these solid oxide electrolysis systems, co-electrolysis systems, as well as polymer electrolyte materials, or even some batteries. Of course, today we are not discussing the sodium-ion batteries. And what do you think, what is the solution? If we have really the negative price for electricity, then I agree totally that we have to synthesize hydrogen. But I mean that this hydrogen can be used more efficiently. Maybe as a chemical, for chemical reactions, to prepare some artificial liquid fuels, for example, or methane, or if we would have new materials, better catalysts for polymer electrolyte fuel cells, and if we use this methane or methanol directly, maybe it's a bit more efficient than regenerate electricity, okay?
Yeah, fully. I fully agree. I mean,
So just to wrap up this cost argument, it's as it stands today, as we've discussed that, with all the bias in the energy markets, you won't compete with fossil energy as it stands now. It doesn't have to pay for any externalities, it gets subsidies, whatever. You just can't compete. It's the way the economy is set. And you won't be able to compete if you develop completely new sets of materials. It will make things better, of course efficiencies will rise, but it won't change the basic picture. So there's only two ways out. Either we rebalance the system, I'm rather doubtful that will happen. Might happen at a European level by not balancing the system but raising the standards. So if you introduce Euro 8, you just shift all the combustion engines out of the market. That can be done, and it's being done anyway. The rest, you just have, I don't think that just by scientific and engineering development you can get around the problem. And of course the efficiency is high. I mean, of course you produce hydrogen, then you go into the most efficient and most rewarding market. But at some point in time you will want to electrify, so you can't just produce for the transport market. Of course you could send it into chemical, and there's massive things you can do, probably not liquid synthetic fuels, because that's again that goes into a combustion engine, so rather not. But there's all this variety, but the basic thing is you'll have to look at the total cost of the system you're generating, even in electricity. So even in the standard conventional electricity system, you don't look at the cost of the single station, you look at the cost in the total. And there might be some element that's extremely expensive, but you need it, so you just take it into account. But you don't say, okay, this is like 10 euros per kilowatt hour because it only runs 100 hours per year, and I have to scrap it. No, you need it. You have to pay for that, but in the total system, it's not visible anymore. So you have to balance that. But as I said, as long as the whole system is biased, there's just no chance. Not at that level. So essentially, you have to find the playing field that is level.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
We saw today on the presentation that Estonia is one of the less independent country by the energy, but we didn't saw that Estonia has the most polluting car park in EU. Successfully, we finished our project about covering our country with electric charging stations. We have more than 250 charging stations over the country, and as I remember, we have sold about 1,000 electric cars last couple of years. So it seems it's successful. But would it be nice advice to our policymakers within next 3 years to invest from the CO2 money to hydrogen fuel stations to cover the main roads and the cities also with these stations? So we will be ready for the next step we have been told today. What is your opinion?
Well, my private opinion is that I think governments have a responsibility to provide a kind of basic grid. So to give access to green technologies to every citizen. Maybe not, let's say, every 10 kilometers from your door, but let's put few basic grids across your country that everybody can use it if they would like to do that. Governments build highways with public money. They build airports. Why we cannot build an infrastructure for green technology which benefit the society as a whole? We saw what pollution costs on health costs. Robert nicely presented in his presentation. I think let's invest in green technology, or let's invest in this kind of electrical chargers, hydrogen refueling stations, everything, to make sure that we can do the switch. Because, to be very honest, today this is one of the big barriers for people to buy these cars. Not only hydrogen cars, but also electrical cars. Because where do they charge? At the moment it's very hard. Yes, the vehicles are still expensive, I agree. But there are people who can pay those vehicles. The first mobile phone was extremely expensive. Only few people in society bought the first mobile phones. Today, come on, you can buy for 50 euro, I don't know, a mobile phone. It's available for everybody. So the prices will go down also for these cars. But if we don't invest in infrastructure, it will take much time to develop, because at the moment it's always a chicken and egg, and they always talk. And at the moment it's very hard for the private side to invest in hydrogen refueling stations or even in electrical charging points if they don't know when they will have a return of investment. Because at the moment, let's be very honest, none of the, even fast charging or whatever, are profit making in the next 5 to 10 years. It doesn't happen. So who will invest in that? Nobody. So I think it's somehow the responsibility of the government to lead by example. Put it a few stations, maybe every 50 kilometers of each door, maybe. We can say 60, 65, you can debate on the definition, but I think that's a basic responsibility. And then it will come. It will come, because when I talk to OEMs, they say, well, there's not enough refueling stations. It's true. In Europe, we're trying to address that. I mean, we have few projects. Is that we try to combine them, let them work together. So let's put a station and let's put cars or a bus. It works. It's a nice concept, but it takes so much time. I mean, 1.5 years to, let's say, lobby, can I say, or explain, education, I don't know. But lobby and waiting to get one station, single one. I will tell you, I built the first station in Belgium. It took me 2 years to get it. So that's not the way how it will work. So if we need to reach the 2030 goals that was set forward by the Commission and we agreed to in the Paris Agreement, we will have to use a different model, because single projects itself will not work. We will have to roll out a huge basic network across Europe, East and West Europe, and public money will be used, but we will gain it back because it will be healthier and we will reduce our health cost and pollution cost and so on and so on.
We have here the key word hydrogen, but my opinion is that the key word have to be the fuel cell. And why? If we are speaking about the direct production of the hydrogen, it's mainly allocated to the existing energy production systems, where we have all the too much electricity in some moment, or we have biogas, what we don't know where to use it or what to do with it. But someone told here that the subsidies are going mainly to the dirty energy, to the countries where the dirty energy components are produced. If we are looking about hydrogen, there are a lot of such places where the electricity can be produced pretty easy without a great influence to the surroundings. But from where to take the hydrogen originally or electricity out is very difficult. Let's take, for example, islands in Scotland. It's a lot of wind energy. You can use their tide energy. You can use their even the wave energy to produce electricity. But on the same islands, in fact, there is no local consumption of the electricity at all. It's so small amount what's consumed there that it's better not to talk about it. But to take pure hydrogen from there to the mainland, it's in fact not too much possible. So that if I say pure hydrogen, so I think that if we will look about the fuel cell technologies wider, we have to look even how to the technologies, how to transfer the initial hydrogen to such state what gives in compression, not under the pressure, but in another form, delivered to the another places, maybe pretty far from the initial production place, by the most economically effective way. And I think that this is one of such direction to what we have to move. And if we are speaking about education, a lot of people remember quite well what will happen if we have hydrogen and flame at the same place. And probably for a lot of people it will be the psychological barrier about the word hydrogen. But if we have, for example, as a final product for the fuel cells, methanol, it's much better, because we broke even in this case this psychological barrier.
Well, I mean, for your question. Two questions actually. So first of all, on the transportation, I mean there will be different technologies necessary. And I think at the moment one is liquefied. I mean there are with big boats to really, like for example between Australia and Japan, they are looking to use a liquefied hydrogen and big volumes to move it to Japan. Also Australia and Korea is at the moment now looking into it, and there they look into ammonia. They're really to basically transport, I mean ammonia would then be the kind of carrier to transport the hydrogen to Korea. Here in Europe also we are trying, for example for road transport, to see whether we can have higher pressure in the trucks. So where it's now I think 200 bar or 300 bar, we are now having some tests with 500 bar to see what the regulations are, and all. So we are trying really to improve and optimize basically the transportation of hydrogen by different means. The second question is about social acceptance. I know the word hydrogen might ring some bells or some worries with some people, and we will need to explain it. And I think we don't need to be afraid. I don't think that we need to find another way or something else, another story like methanol, or which I do believe methanol can be a way, but I think hydrogen is safe. We are using hydrogen since, I mean, the industry already using hydrogen since ages. I mean, it's nothing new. They know how to work with hydrogen. So what I think is when the people, the customers, they are not used to work with hydrogen. It's mainly the business side who is using it a lot. So it's very safe. There's no issue actually. So, but we need to explain it. It's education again. And we are doing, I mean, in the cross-cutting, half of our projects, we have 20 projects dealing with safety out of the 34. It's about explanation. So, but we should not try to go around it through another story. I don't like that. Be transparent, be open, and be sure that, I mean, if it's safe, you have to say it's safe and why it's safe. And also, on the other hand, say where are the dangers? You have to explain it, that they understand it. No need to hide. That's my point.
You can also have methane and a flame in the same place in your cooker. Nobody has a problem with that.
Okay, I should like to comment, Raivo, your viewpoints that you succeeded to have the breakthrough during the 1.5 year battle for hydrogen. Applications in Estonia started already in 2000. When we started the Solid Oxide Fuel Cell project together with Enea-UPO, and these times already we discussed in the Ministry of Economics and Communications about the possibility to move or to take the first steps to build up hydrogen infrastructure in Estonia. So, but you succeeded to have the breakthrough. Do you know why? Because at July, Estonian government received the report from the European Commission about that Estonia's electricity system, generating electricity system, is the most polluting electricity system in Europe. And we are producing 2 times more CO2 and other gases to produce 1 kilowatt electricity than Poland, and 2.7 times more than Germany, for example. And maybe it is the main reason why you finally succeeded to
Might be.
And why I am very happy that it happened, of course. I am not against this hydrogen at all. Thank you.
So we have to wrap up now. Finish. Maybe one last question.
Just a short comment, because sometimes it is considered that fuel cell is an energy storage device, but this is not true. It is only energy converting device. This is what I wanted to say. You need the extra device for hydrogen storage, for instance. But
yeah, I have a question, really. And the main driving force for this hydrogen and electricity at the moment, electric cars, is getting pollution out of urban settings. And this will be done at any cost in rich countries in next 10, 20, 30 years. Otherwise, they will not habitable. But is it really driving the pollution to the other places, or is it really greener what we do in the end? Because wherever we get higher costs, there is more industrial operations. Wherever you get higher cost of something, you suspect there is more work and more pollution behind. So what is the big picture there?
I don't think is green technologies produce more CO2. I don't believe that. I mean, of course, we have to completely decarbonize our society, the industry, everywhere. And so, I think what you mean is really like if you have built solar panels, you make CO2. But I think this is minimum or
and
not.
It's not free, as you said. Solar power is not free. It's just the price of the solar panel per total kilowatt hour produced. So it's not free.
But after 12 or 15 years, when capex is covered, this is free.
One reason for the higher cost is just law of numbers. You have fewer units produced. There is some talk about what the CO2 balance of a battery is. I don't quite believe the figures, but because it's sort of blaming again. So the main thing is you have the established companies versus new companies, or you have established technology versus new technology, which is sometimes in the same company. And it's just if you it's different processes, it's different raw materials. It's not necessarily that higher cost also has more labor and more whatever. It's just, it's not as efficient in the production. So I wouldn't take that as the sole criterion. And no. I understand where you come. I understand where you come from. So, but I think it's just at least part of it. It's not transparent, so it's not so easy to answer. But I think initially the higher cost comes from there's more research that's being factored in, and it's just lower numbers. And on the other side, it's also, the cost structure as we have now is not a level market. So we have subsidies on the wrong places, and if that remains like that, it will never take off. It's just the way it is.
So thank you for all the presenters today, panelists here, and I think we had very good presentations today, showing that really something is happening and the technology is out of labs for a while already. Now it's time to increase the volumes and go to the mass market, because technology is proven that it works. It's just a matter of scale in order to bring down the costs. And of course, we have to continue this very good proven partnership between public sector, industry and academia. So cooperation, cooperation and cooperation. That's only way to get the technology into the real mass market as soon as possible. And then, of course, more we have cooperation from the stakeholders, I think it also have much more influence on the policymakers, that they see that really things are moving forward and it's not really something new created in somewhere dark laboratories which never will be feasible in real life. Thank you again, all the panelists, and thank you for the audience, for the patience. So we have had very long discussions here, but I hope it has been also interesting for you to listen what we have had to say, and it also was really reflected back to us from your response and your lot of questions we have had here. And I hope that we can continue this series of seminars we have had. This is second one now, and maybe next year or year after we have quite a lot of more news, and a lot of things have happened during this time already. So thank you once again, and we can have coffee and networking as, you know, a few hours ago.